Hello guys, in this video we are going to learn what is a mapping sheet, how to read, understand and get most out of a mapping sheet. Mapping sheet is nothing but a document or a spreadsheet provided by a BA in consultation with an architect or number of architects. So this is how the mapping sheet looks. The initial look, if you see, it has various sections here, then various tabs here, and we are going to explore one by one. Let's see what all tabs are available here. So there is summary and version control, and the entity tabs here, which maintains source to target entities, and there is NFT tabs, which are nothing but NFR testing tabs, and references. Okay, we'll get into each tab one by one. And the yellow highlighted tabs here are nothing but the separation tabs. It contains nothing, it just separates different contexts. Okay, so summary and version control, entity information, NFT requirements and references. Let's get into tab by tab and inspect what exactly they contain. Here, if you see, it says about source system, source entity. See, your source entity is customer online order, and target entity are persons, address, MFA codes, multi-factor authentication codes. Just see, the customer in source not necessarily transforms into customers. It transforms to persons here. So you have to keep in mind that this is where mapping sheet becomes very useful. So it gives which entity in the source transforms into which entity in the target, and the source database and target database types. So here it is Postgres, but it can be Oracle or MySQL, whatever it applies. Then changes approved by, then changes approved by architect. This is BA. BA stands for business analyst, and so on and so forth. And this has got a section about the tabs, like about each tab here. It explains here each tab contains what all information, technical, non-technical, non-functional, functional, like that. Okay. Then it contains information about authors, like who is the architect, who is the business analyst, development lead, QA lead. QA lead is nothing but test lead. Then sequence of ingestion, like when you do ETL pipeline, typically the data has to be ingested at the source and finally it gets settled at the target system. So that's called ingestion. Then it has information about sequence of ingestion and load. So we'll get into this subject, what is ingestion and load, later in separate videos, because that itself is a subject. Let's go to the next tab. So next tab is version control. Here you have the version number, date, at what date what was changed, author, who changed what, changes made, a brief description about the changes, reviewed by business analyst, reviewed by architect, and overall approval status. Then this is the separation tab. It contains nothing. Let's get into the entity mapping tabs. These are the most crucial tabs in a mapping sheet. Here it has mappings like this: source to target, source field, source data type, target field, target data type, API dependency, transformation rule. These are the most important logic to be tested. Business rules, default value, comments. Okay, so here you see source entity customer transforms to target entity persons. Okay, and how that transformation or how the translation happens, that is defined here as a requirement. See, the full name entry is appearing twice here. Why? Because in the source you have full name as a single column, which is varchar 50, but in the target it is split into two columns, varchar 100 and 100, and that's defined here. How to split that and save it into the target entity, that's mentioned here. Trim and split the customer.full name by comma. Trim and save the first parts as first names. Same thing here for the last name. Save last part as last name. So these are the mapping definitions which a developer has to go through and implement, and a manual tester or an automation tester, they have to test and validate that it is working as expected. See here, delivery address translates to current address in target, and in the target there are more space here, varchar 200, it is varchar 100 here. All these things to be tested, and this has to be validated by, this has to be resolved by a API, external API, where you pass the address detail, then it gives a response whether it's a valid address or not. So we will get into those aspects later, but just note that you have to go to the Swagger document, which is defined in the reference section, and get those details. Also in the transformation rule, it mentions about the joins which should match the result. Okay, then email ID maps to email ID in the target, varchar 100. Then it says direct mapping, do not convert to lowercase. That means if email is mentioned in capital cases or camel cases, do not convert them, and it has to be a valid email format. What does that mean? Email cannot be a simply junk characters or simply cannot be something at something.com. It has to be a valid email. There are APIs, Microsoft APIs are there to validate that, or any other API your architect or business provides, that you have to apply. Okay, and make sure that gives a success response. Only then that validation rule will pass. Similar way, there is another section here which defines source entity customer to target entity addresses, and there are various mapping logic is defined here. You have to go through. Same way, there is another tab here, online order entity. Exactly same manner it defines which is the source entity, which is the target entity, and what kind of API dependency, then transformation rule. Okay, so on and so forth. There will be n number of tabs here depending on n number of entities in source, and you have to go through each tab by tab and validate that transformation rule. Okay, now there is separation tab, and let's go to the next one, which is NFT tab. NFT stands for non-functional requirement testing. What does this exactly mean? Here it says NFR B2B customers, non-functional requirement for B2B customers. Day 0, this kind of load is expected. Day 1, this kind of load is expected. And what is the boundary conditions? So in your ETL mapping sheet, you may not get exactly identical to this, but something like this, so you get the gist of it. Okay, same way, there is another NFT tab here. It says D2C customers. Similar way, day 0 load, day 1 load, and boundary conditions. Let's look at the reference section. So here you see The person address validation, federal government Swagger doc, MS email MS stands for Microsoft Email Validation API Swagger doc. So the documents are missing. So you should immediately go back to the BA asking for the URLs, which in turn will get back to the architects or business. They will get the requirements or Swagger doc links here, and this will be eventually filled. Only then you should be able to develop or test the pipeline. Right? So that's pretty much about the ETL mapping sheet. If you like the video, please give a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're looking for any other aspects of ETL development or testing pipeline, please leave a comment or submit the Google Sheet for a new video. Thank you very much for watching.